Hi, everyone. Welcome to AWC, our Springfield chapter's Lunch and Learn session here for March. I'm Sarah Kincaid. I am a board member of AWC in Springfield, and I'm joined here with Mandy Bekoin. Not Bekoin. That's wrong. Say it for me, Mandy. Bekoin?
Yep, you got it.
Great. So thanks for joining us, Mandy. We'll get to you in just a minute. A little bit of housekeeping notes for everyone on the call. We are looking at some happy hour type events in the next couple of months, and a membership drive for anyone who's interested in joining. We'll have discounted rates. So we'll be sending out some information soon about that. We also have our chapter awards coming up, which usually happens in April and May. So we'll be sending out some links about our chapter awards. You can nominate anyone who's a member of the chapter who's gone above and beyond. And then you can also nominate anyone who just works in communications or marketing or journalism in our field in our kind of chapter area, which is, kind of covers Central Illinois. We do go wider than that now, thanks to COVID. So there are some pluses to everyone being at home on their computers. We can have a better system for talking to new people. So those two nominations will be going out. We'll send out the link so everyone can fill it out. It's just a Google form to nominate people. So we'll share that in a little bit, probably via email and on Facebook and stuff. So that is kind of what I wanted to share for the AWC chapter notes. Again, if you're interested in joining us, we'd love to have you. If you have any questions, we do have membership folks on the call. So if you wanted to talk to anyone, you can probably have a side little chat while you're here. If you guys would use the chat to introduce yourself and say hello. One of those things that we're missing due to being on Zoom is that networking opportunity to get to know your coworkers or colleagues in the area. So say hi in the chat and tell us where you work and maybe, kind of interesting things. If you have any comments or questions for Mandy, I'll kind of flag those for her at the end of the talk. So thanks for joining us. So Mandy Bekoin is a business development support specialist at Hanson Professional Services, which is an engineering firm here in Springfield. Before joining the team at Hanson in 2015, Mandy was a page designer, copy editor, and award-winning headline writer at the State Journal Register for 13 years. She is the mom of 2 children. She's not working on her public speaking skills with Toastmasters. She enjoys putting her fitness to the test at CrossFit Instinct in Springfield. She likes traveling, creating scrapbooks, and following the basketball, football teams of University of Illinois, which is also her alma mater. So thanks, Mandy, for joining us. I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Let's see. I guess I just need to share my screen here. Moment to get organized here. I would like to start by thanking Jayette for inviting me to speak here today. It's been a very long and winding path to get to this point.
So Mandy, we can see your notes. I don't know if you did that on purpose.
Okay,
let me your screen.
Does this, is
it? That's better.
Okay, thank you. I was not sure how that was going to go. As I was saying, it's been a long and winding path to get to this point, but I'm very happy that I've had the faith in myself and that the people in my life have had the faith in me, most importantly, to help me get to this point. These are my children, Chantal and JP, as I mentioned earlier. They are one of my reasons for taking the step out to address my fear of public speaking. I want to show them that they can also conquer their fears in life. In fact, just this morning, Chantal was very upset because she just finished a writing assignment for her 3rd grade class, and they are required to get up and read their stories in front of the class, which was very scary for her. And she was crying and she was very upset. And I told her, we can't run away. She wanted to stay home from school. I told her, we can't run away. We have to face our fears. And we have to get past these things so that we can grow as people. And so she went to school, and I assume that she is doing her reading and doing okay. I will find out when I get home. But as I said, that's one of the reasons that I'm doing this is for them. Oop, actually, I'm going to let that slide sit up there for a bit. Prior to the last couple of years, I would have been really hard pressed to set that example for them. For the first 43 years or so of my life, I was petrified of public speaking. And when I say petrified, I mean that if I had to stand up and talk in front of a group of people for any reason at all, I literally thought I was going to die. I had the pounding heart. I had the shaking legs and arms. I had just the panicked thoughts running through my head that I just couldn't get away from. Even short, simple speaking tasks would make me so nervous and uncomfortable. I dreaded work meetings if I was responsible for leading the discussion. I lacked confidence in my words, in my ideas, in myself. Even as a child, I was timid and I was shy. If my mom asked me to go next door to ask the neighbor for something, to borrow an egg or something like that, I just could barely even do it. Those Girl Scouts selling cookies door to door, I was not one of them. I started piano lessons when I was about 8 or 9 years old. As soon as I found out I was going to have to give a recital, I begged my parents to let me quit. My fear paralyzed me. I dreaded speeches in my high school speech and history classes and presentations in college. I didn't even like to ask questions in class, let alone stand up and speak in front of everyone. I hated the spotlight. I was a quiet kid who preferred to just blend in. I avoided opportunities for much of my life if I thought I might be required to speak to people. In college, I majored in journalism. Having loved writing since childhood, I dreamed of being a reporter. Once I got into the journalism school at my alma mater, the University of Illinois, I realized how stressful it was for me to call people and do interviews. So I backed off of being a reporter. Instead, I pursued copy editing and page design, which allowed me to stay in my shell. Now, don't get me wrong. I loved my career choice, my job and my coworkers. But I wonder sometimes if my lack of confidence held me back from reporting jobs that might have fulfilled me even more. As my career progressed, I attended conferences and events with confident, dynamic speakers, and I envied how easily they seemed to be able to stand up and just talk from their hearts. Eventually, I left my newspaper job and I moved into public relations. In 2015, I started my current job with the corporate communications group at Hanson Professional Services, an engineering firm based here in Springfield. Over the past few years, our group has evolved into taking on some additional duties and increased visibility within our company. As part of that, I started to look at myself more closely. I wanted to be my best and give my best. I had a lot of questions about how I could do that and what I needed to change. I was tired of letting my fear of being noticed dictate my life. At some point, an uncomfortable question came into the back of my mind and started pushing to the front. What was my biggest weakness? What was holding me back? It wasn't a hard question to answer. My confidence needed a boost, and the only way to do that was to take a chance. It was in that moment I realized what the answer was: to join Toastmasters. In the following months, I pushed the idea around in my head. At first, I just let it simmer there. I knew I would have to get out of my comfort zone to do this. Then I found the courage to speak about the idea to a friend, a coworker, and finally my boss. I went to a one-day conference and brought it up with the instructor, who encouraged me to follow through. Finally, with 2 coworkers in tow, I attended my first meeting at League of Our Own Toastmasters here in Springfield. I was ready. I was excited. I was going to do this. We arrived and we went through introductions and watched excellent speeches. Then the time came for table topics. Table topics is the part of a Toastmasters meeting when participants are called on to give a brief answer to an impromptu question. My coworkers were called to speak, and they each stood up and responded as if they had been attending meetings for months. Then my turn came. I stood with all those familiar feelings of terror and struggled to blurt out 30 seconds worth of babble that I'm pretty sure made no sense. I sat back down, wondering why I'd been the one of our group most eager to start this new endeavor. I was so tempted to make that my last meeting. Who needed this growth stuff? It was highly overrated. I was meant to sit quietly in the corner, right? Wrong. Something inside of me said, not this time. There have been too many times in the past when I let that fear limit me and strip away opportunities. After graduation from college, I worked at newspapers for the first 15 years of my career. During part of that time, I was a copy editor and page designer at the State Journal Register here in town. At that time, designing the front page of the paper was a major milestone for young copy editors. You got to attend the daily editorial meeting with the big editors, and part of the role was to pitch state, national, and international wire stories to fill the non-local page space on the front page. The editors had the final say on which wire stories would run, and the front page designer had to summarize the day's news during the meeting. My fear of public speaking made that process extremely stressful for me. I would spend much more time than my colleagues trying to find the right stories ahead of time, and I would stress out almost to the point of making myself sick up to and during these meetings. Not only was I terrified to speak, but I was petrified that I would choose the wrong stories to pitch. Once the meeting was over and I was back at my desk doing the actual work of putting the page together, I was in my element, and I loved that my boss had the confidence in me to take charge of the page. Unfortunately, the stress and fear got the best of me, and I ultimately asked my boss if he could take me off the front page rotation. After that, I found my niche working on other pages, but looking back, I regret letting the fear beat me. I've missed out on other opportunities too. I'm a lifelong Catholic, and before I got married and settled into family life, I was very involved in a retreat community through my church. These weekend-long retreats featured several speakers giving talks on different topics. After I had attended the retreats for a couple of years, people started asking me to join the teams of people who organized the weekends, including giving the talks. I was asked multiple times to speak, and I'm happy to say that I did say yes to doing talks on several weekends, but I spent most of my time reading straight from my notes. There were at least as many times when I refused to take a speaking role because of how stressful it was when I agreed. Another sign that I needed to do something about my fear. Fast forward back to the start of my Toastmasters journey. After that first meeting, I continued attending and nervously taking on roles. I realized at one point that being a speaker as accomplished as the experienced club members wasn't out of reach for me. I just had to be patient with myself. If I quit, there would be no chance to improve. Gradually, as time went on, it got a bit easier and a bit easier. Our meetings went virtual, and I took on more roles, my confidence growing as I got used to the technical aspects of being on camera. I gave my first speech with my notes taped on the wall behind my laptop, and I didn't die. At this time last year, I was asked at work to help lead some virtual training sessions over Zoom. I would be walking employees through a new software platform for our client relationship management database. I'm not going to lie, I was anxious about it. Not only would I be speaking to groups of people about the software, which I was still learning myself to a certain extent, but I would have to field questions about it. The unknown made me incredibly nervous. What if I didn't know an answer? Would I look like I didn't know what I was doing? All my old fears and insecurities came crashing back down on me. The day of the first training session came, and I called on my Toastmasters experience to help me. My supervisor also teamed up with me on many of the sessions, which helped take some pressure off. And as time went on, I did a few on my own. I learned that attitude is everything. I had to tell myself that the people learning wouldn't know if I made a mistake. And even if they did notice it, they likely wouldn't think twice about it. My boss also gave me some great advice about handling the questions. If you don't know the answer, tell them you'll find out, let them know. We're all human. We all make mistakes. The more grace we can give each other and ourselves, the more potential for success we'll have. I tend to be a perfectionist, so this concept of accepting imperfection can be a hard one for me. Speaking in front of League of Our Own Toastmasters Club membership has helped me build a sense of comfort and confidence in giving prepared speeches and even those impromptu responses on different topics. Accepting roles in the meetings and in the club has also helped me develop leadership skills that I've been able to apply professionally and personally. Recently, I even took part in a club speech contest, which I never would have imagined myself doing before. My mantra has become, why not? In social situations, I can make small talk so much better than I could before. Even though I'm an introvert by nature and being social often drains me, I have the ability to connect with people and make play dates more pleasant when I'm spending 2 hours with a parent that I've never met before. I have the courage to go to my kids' class parties full of more people I don't know well or at all. And more times than not, I end up meeting someone great and having a very positive social experience. In the past, I might have avoided situations like these and robbed my kids of the fun childhood experiences that they deserve. Even something as seemingly simple as standing up at church and doing a reading would have caused me stress years ago. But now I'm looking forward to volunteering as a reader at my daughter's first communion and confirmation later this month. The skills I've learned at our meetings have helped me improve so many areas of my life. And it doesn't only benefit me, it benefits the people around me when I'm able to set them at ease and help them to enjoy something that they also might have been dreading. In the 2 years since I sat down after that dreadful table topics experience, I felt my confidence rise at work as I lead virtual meetings with greater ease than I ever could have imagined and speak up when I have an idea. Do I still get nervous? You bet. Do I let that nervousness paralyze me anymore? I'm proud to say no. If your blood runs cold just thinking about confronting your own fear of public speaking, I urge you to remember that you will survive the discomfort that comes with starting out. At this point, you might be starting to wonder what Toastmasters meeting looks like. I know I felt intimidated looking through the website before my first meeting. There is a lot to take in, but as you start the process of attending meetings, you realize that it's a self-paced process. There is no pressure to move any faster than your comfort level. Meetings seem a bit formal at first. We are encouraged to use a certain intro for our speaking parts, and we follow an agenda to help us stay on schedule. Being on time and speaking within time limits is important in Toastmasters because it's important in real life. We have a variety of meeting roles that members rotate, such as Toastmaster of the Day, who decides the meeting theme, guides the agenda, and introduces speakers. There are also smaller roles, such as the Thought of the Day speaker, who simply gives a motivational quote at the beginning of the meeting. A couple examples of our other roles are a timer, who helps to keep us on time throughout the meeting, as well as a grammarian, who tracks the quality of our speech and gives us a word of the day to use when we speak. Then, of course, there is table topics, when club members and guests get the chance to think on their feet by answering a question with no time to prepare. Initially, it can be challenging and intimidating, but I have found since practicing answering the questions in a positive and supportive environment that I've greatly improved my ability to answer questions off the top of my head. That's helped me not only with table topics, but in situations outside of Toastmasters that require me to think and react quickly. Each meeting also features one or more speeches given by club members. The speeches are an opportunity for members to practice their speaking skills in a safe, non-judgmental space with encouraging people. Each speaker is evaluated by another member and given constructive feedback for future speeches. Evaluations are about more than pointing out the things a speaker can improve, though. They are also about building up a speaker's confidence by letting them know what they did well. Even the most experienced speakers can benefit from feedback and suggestions. There are other roles, but the most important thing to know is that you can start small and work your way up as you're ready. I've performed all the club roles multiple times, and I feel comfortable in all of them. I also became a club officer last summer, which has given me more leadership practice and opportunities. A cardinal rule that I have adopted from my personal public speaking journey is that perfection is not only overrated, but impossible. We don't expect perfection in Toastmasters, and we encourage members to start right where they are, regardless of the amount of speaking experience they may have. Being a good speaker does not require perfection, just the willingness to learn. With that, let's talk about what I have learned from Toastmasters about giving a good speech. If you tend to talk fast, like I do sometimes, it can really pay to take a deep breath and just slow down. If you feel like you're talking too quickly, just take a breath and slow down so that your audience can fully absorb what you're saying. Clarity is also extremely important. And I will add that when you're speaking, it's helpful to take note of your volume. If you're not wearing a microphone, for instance, is your voice carrying enough for people in the back of the room to hear what you're saying? As human beings, I think we are all in the habit of saying and so and other types of filler words, especially when we're not sure exactly what we want to say. This is a habit that can be hard to break. And we're not looking for perfection, but just being aware of how much we say these words can be helpful. Since I started Toastmasters, I have become hyper aware of them, and it always pops out to me when people use them. The best way to avoid using these words is to use your pauses strategically. If you're not sure what you need to say next, take that pause. Let your brain catch up with you. Pausing also allows your audience to catch up with you. It can be so tempting to use PowerPoint slides as your own notes when you're using slides in a presentation, but they really are meant to be a tool to keep your audience engaged and informed. When creating your slides, remember that less is more, less text, and keeping your content in as few words as possible, using bullet points is the ideal approach. Also, try to paraphrase rather than read your slides, and use visuals, which give your audience something interesting to focus on. We have all likely been or seen the speaker who robotically reads their notes during a speech. One of the most important aspects of connecting with your audience is eye contact. If you can memorize at least part of your speech to a certain extent, as opposed to reading the paper that's right in front of you, it helps you to give your voice natural variation in tone, which helps you to come across as more conversational and more like you would sound if you were just talking to somebody in an everyday situation. Consider condensing your speech down to an outline as well, just so you aren't tempted to read everything word for word. I also suggest making eye contact with as many people in the room as you can. It really makes each person feel included, which enhances your message. When speaking in person, if you're in a situation where you're at the front of the room with a lectern, it's very tempting to use that lectern as a barrier, especially if you're extremely nervous. As you start to feel more comfortable giving presentations, try moving around the front of the room instead. The dynamics of physical movement help capture and hold the attention of your audience, so don't be afraid to move and to talk with your hands. Props, when they fit with the mood of your presentation, can be a great way to add humor and drama as well. Which reminds me, as soon as I'm finished with this presentation, I'm treating myself to some ice cream in my special bowl. Online presentations have a different technological considerations from in-person speeches. So it makes sense to double check your hardware, your software, your camera height, your internet connection, anything you can think of to keep something from going wrong within your control. I also suggest running through your speech during a meeting with a friend to figure out how far you need to be from the camera and just what you prefer in terms of your camera position. The key to a successful speech is familiarity. The more you practice, the more likely you are to remember your main points and be able to make that all important eye contact. Try gathering a few family members or friends and asking for their feedback on your delivery, or record yourself so you can observe what you like about your speech or what you'd like to change. Familiarity with your speech also helps to ease your anxiety. Broadening your collection of experiences can help you build confidence in and pursuing public speaking in your life, which in turn can translate into improved confidence. For instance, I used to be terrified of spiders until I moved into a home that was near a wooded area, and I started encountering them all the time when I was outdoors, especially by my mailbox, which I couldn't avoid. After spending a year or two around them, I began to be desensitized to them, and they didn't scare me as much anymore. Reflecting on that has given me perspective about my life, such as speaking in front of other people. It helped me to realize that if I can conquer my fear of spiders, I can conquer my fear of public speaking too. Several years ago, I also started making an effort to make more phone calls instead of emails at work. Being on the spot with people forced me out of my comfort zone and helped me to learn how to think on my feet. I think many of us have a bad habit of talking ourselves down. We tend to think that if we're not good at something or if we're struggling with our self-esteem, that it's okay to just tell people, I am this bad thing. But the start to believing in yourself for something like public speaking is to tell yourself that you can do it. Be your own biggest fan, and then surround yourself with other people who are your biggest fans. You have a treasure trove of valuable experiences and perspectives to give to the world. Now get out there and start sharing them. Our area has several Toastmasters clubs. I can vouch for the stellar group at League of Our Own, if it fits your schedule. But the other clubs have a variety of wonderful and supportive members as well. League of Our Own is online only for now. We plan to meet in person again eventually, but we will be a hybrid club, which means that we will incorporate Zoom in our meetings for those who would rather attend virtually. If you have a phobia of public speaking, I hope you'll consider visiting a meeting at one of the clubs. Fear can either hold us back or it can motivate us to make positive change. Through this journey, I have found my voice. As time goes on, I am learning how and when to use it, and I'm learning that I shouldn't be afraid to use it. If you're facing a fear as we meet today, I challenge you to take those small steps. Reach out for help and encouragement. In time, as you learn from people who have been through it, you'll find ways to motivate and coach yourself through those tough moments. Know that you have more strength than you realize. You've got this. I'm going to leave up the slide with the Toastmasters Club information while I take questions so that if any of you want to take notes or write anything down, it'll be up here for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mandy. I don't see any questions yet in the
Okay.
chat, but thank you for doing this. I know we appreciate it. And I know a lot of people get nervous talking in front of people, even just within their own teams, if they have to make a presentation to a group. So thanks so much for taking time out of your day to talk to us about your experience and how the Toastmasters has helped you.
You're welcome. I was happy to do it. Very happy to be here.
Yeah. Anyone, feel free to unmute and ask your question if you'd like. Here's one. How do you find topics to speak about?
Well, with Toastmasters, it's really pretty wide open. We do have an educational system called Pathways that people can go through. But as far as speech topics, especially when you're starting out, the very first speech that you give is just about yourself. It's just a speech to introduce yourself to your club members. So that's what I started with. And then my second speech that I gave was actually somewhat similar to this one, a shorter version of this one, just about my journey. And beyond that, you can almost choose any topic you want. There are certain categories depending on where you are in the Pathways system, but you have a lot of control over the topics that you pick to speak about.
I don't know if you're seeing the chat, a couple more questions. How much of a time commitment is the Toastmasters other than just the meetings you're showing us here? So if they attended meetings, how much time in between?
If you're just a member and you're just going to attend the meetings, it's really just, I think some of the clubs have, most of them are an hour. I think most of the meetings are an hour long. I know there's at least one club that is maybe an hour and a half long meetings, but for League of Our Own, we meet twice a month for an hour and it's over lunch break. So that's a lot easier for me because I know my evenings with kids, my evenings are a lot busier and just taken up with things. So it's easy for me to go to the noon meetings and just kind of go on with my day. But yeah, there's really, if you're just a member, if you're not at the point of being an officer or anything like that, there's really not a huge time commitment. I mean, I guess, if you're giving a speech, the time it takes outside to write your speech, that's going to vary. But other than that, I haven't found it to be overwhelming.
Gotcha. How do you catch yourself talking too fast? I also talk too fast, so I constantly have to just slow down. So do you have any tips or tricks around catching yourself there?
Oh, gosh, I think experience has been the biggest thing for me. I'm so aware of it now, and I think when we give our speeches in the meetings and we get our evaluations, a lot of time, that may be something that an evaluator will point out if you were speaking too quickly. And I think for me, the more meetings that I go to, and also the more evaluations that I give to speakers, it just gets into my head. It all kind of absorbs in there. And I just have this awareness of it. I think a lot of it is the practice, but it just, after a while, you're just aware of it more.
And how long did it take you to walk through obviously this has been a slow growing process for you. So how long was it before you didn't have the physical reactions to, getting in front of people?
Well, gosh, honestly, I still have some of that. I don't know if that will ever completely go away, but I think I've learned about different ways of handling that, like deep breathing. I'll do just some very deep belly breathing sometimes before I know I'm going to need to speak, and that helps to calm me down. I mean, I always like to pray, and I like to sometimes just meditate a little just to calm myself. So I think, the most severe symptoms, I think maybe probably after my first speech. I was pretty nervous for my first speech, but after I got through it and I realized I can do this, that self-awareness helped to take away the worst of it, because I could look back and I could say, I did this once, so I know I can do it again.
How's this public speaking skills that you've learned, have they helped you improve in any other area of your work life?
Oh my gosh, I so much so. When I mean, we do a lot of virtual meetings now that we're, so many people are working from home and we're not meeting in person as much. And I feel like even phone calls, they feel like a bigger deal because you're getting on camera with somebody and it almost feels like more of a production. And I feel so much more confident just with setting up meetings, going into meetings and leading them, even if it's just with a couple of people. I used to get so nervous because I work with engineers and I didn't know anything about engineering when I started here, and they were just very kind of intimidating to me. And once I started talking to them more, I realized they're just people like I am. And, if I don't know the answer to something, I'll just, like my boss had told me that I mentioned earlier, I'll just find out the answer and I'll get back to them. And nobody expects me to be, to know everything. And so I think once I started throwing myself into those situations, I started to realize everybody's just human, nobody's better than anybody else. And that's made a huge difference for me. It's really helped with my confidence, and I feel like I'm a better employee because I'm more willing to go into these meetings and do these things that I need to be doing instead of trying to hide from them.
I think that's all the questions in the chat. Anyone else see something, feel free to chime in. Oh, what's next for you? I missed that one. What's your next challenge? What are you tackling next?
Oh my gosh, that's a really great question. you know, One thing that I will admit is I still really struggle with signing up for the speeches at Toastmasters. And I've I've been in the club for a really long time. It's been about 2.5 years now. I mean, I guess that's not a really long time, but for me it is. And I've only done 2 actual speeches. And so it feels kind of silly because, I'm here doing this, but I put a lot of my focus on the different roles at the meetings. They require, different levels of speaking and organization and leadership and things like that. And I've made that my focus. So I think probably my next challenge is just to sign up for that next speech.
Keep going, you'll get better and better, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. And I hope that everyone picked up a tip or two while they were here. We can all, I'm not one of these people that's afraid of public speaking, but I know it's very common. And I have other fears. So, I think it's more about just tackling your fear, regardless of what it is, right? So like you said,
Exactly.
with the spiders, tackling that head on and kind of dealing with it, and how would you approach it? And as long as you have a mental plan on how to tackle it, then, it makes it a little bit easier. So I appreciate you sharing your vulnerability with us. And, if anyone has any questions about AWC or joining us, we are recruiting for our board for next year. So if anyone's interested in being on the board, you really want to take on a leadership role, we'll be reaching out soon about that. So thanks everyone for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone.